and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today, Brad Chandler. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brad and I have known each other for several years. I used to work for Brad's company, and essentially you gave me the title of director of marketing for your company, which, yeah, we had a lot of fun. But a lot has changed since then. It's been almost 10 years.
Crazy how fast time flies.
It really is. And so I've wanted to have you on the show for a while because you have a really interesting story, and I think it'll be valuable to listeners. So let's jump
Sweet.
right in.
All right.
What were the values and beliefs you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who you became?
Wow. So the beliefs that I created were that something was wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough. And it drove me for 47 years. There was some good and there was lots of bad. The good part was I thought money was the way to prove my worth because that's how my dad showed me love was through money.
Mm.
So I figured out how to make millions of dollars, and I made millions of dollars, and I also gave back millions of dollars. So if you look at the positives, well, there were a lot of positives, but that was one that I was able to make money and create a company that now runs without me. But there were lots and lots of negatives in there too that were driven by this lack of belief. And there was, $9 million worth of business mistakes, 5 business mistakes. There was 2 marriages that didn't work out, 2 kids with anxiety, health. I mean, my health was okay, but it's nothing like it was today. So yeah, that was the major belief that drove, and I guess the values may be hard work. So I paired those together, and here we are 50 years later, and a lot has
Yeah.
changed in the last 3 years.
It's so you answered that question so differently than every other guest I've ever had because they go into what values were instilled in them by their parents versus the way you interpreted it as the beliefs that you created yourself.
Yeah. So what I've learned after working with 100, over 100 people and studying under some of the best I think in the world that have helped thousands of people find freedom and happiness by this very thing, it's turning around those self-limiting beliefs. And Lori, I have yet to meet someone, maybe one person of the hundreds and hundreds of people I've spoke with, I've yet to meet someone who didn't have some type of stressful situation in their childhood or some unmet need that they didn't create a meaning around that is somehow today negatively affecting their lives, and typically all areas of their lives.
How do you know what those beliefs are?
So if I would have been listening to this show 5 years ago, my lack of feeling enough led me to lack self-love and had a low self-image. But if I would have heard this, I'd have been like, no, I have a high self-image. I love myself. I don't care what other people think. But it was all a lie. I really did. That's why I used weed and alcohol quite frequently to feel comfortable in social situations. So for people like me, I created this self-love quiz. It's like takes 3 minutes. It's 12 questions. You can take it at bradchandler.com/quiz. And if you score in one of the lower 2 tiers, there's either extreme self-love, mild self-love, or lack of self-love. If you score the 2 lower ones, it's a clear indication that you have negative beliefs that are driving your life. Now, how do you figure those out? I mean, there's 1,000 different ways, right? But what I do is I go back to the scenes where you had stress or your needs weren't met or there was some type of trauma, and we have a conversation around what did it mean to you? At the end of the day, my dad's hitting me with a belt. Why is this happening to me? I must be bad. That's how I internalized it. So you just go back and you figure out, because no one's born with depression, anxiety, addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's all learned behavior. So what we have to do is we got to go back to the source of when we learned it. And then what you're going to figure out every single time, this is incredible. Every negative symptom in your life right now, whether it's drinking too much, eating too much, anxiety, depression, I literally could go on for hours, right? Is your brain's attempt to solve a problem that it thinks is more painful than even the negativity that comes from saying drinking a 12-pack of beer a night. This thing that we're running from is the meaning that I'm talking about typically. And that meaning is untrue. So when we show our brains that has a built-in mismatch detector that, wait, I've been living for 47 years under this untruth that I'm not enough. But let me think about all the times in my life where I was enough. Your brain can't hold conflicting thoughts. So what happens is when that clicks in, your brain's like ding, 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 ding. Oh my gosh, I am enough. Then
Mm-hmm.
the symptoms literally go away instantaneous. And if it's done right, they never return.
Is this like a generational thing though? Like you talk about um, people who grow up in families with alcohol abuse or drug abuse or any kind of abuse. Or it doesn't even have to be abuse. It could be like you mentioned, being brought up to with the value that it's important to work hard. And so like that gets passed down through generations. Is
Is
that
it your question?
are
Is this
those
a
kind of
generational
beliefs?
thing?
Yeah, the beliefs.
Hell yeah. Yeah, like people say, "Oh, my depression runs in my family. Alcoholism runs in my family." Bullshit. Alcoholism doesn't run in your family. What runs in your family is the associated trauma that the alcoholic puts out. So,
Mm.
yes, my parents didn't wake up and say, "Hey, we're going to screw that kid Brad up." No, they were doing the absolute best they could do based on their childhood. And why was their childhood not the greatest? Because of their parents and their parents. So, yes, most human beings are living in what is called the multi-generational curse. And I believe if you have children and you're listening to this, the greatest gift you can ever give your child, it's not to teach them how to work hard or there's one thing and one thing only. It's to break this multi-generational curse forever. Because I think if you break it in one generation, it should continue on and on and on. Just like we pass the bad things, we can pass the good things. So how do you do that? You teach your child how to love themselves unconditionally. How can you, as a parent, teach a child how to love themselves unconditionally if you don't? You can't. I didn't. And hence why
Mm.
my two kids had anxiety. I was a single dad. I did everything for them all the time. And when I was told 3 years ago on a call that you have a tick, you blink about you blink when you talk about your childhood, this may be affecting your son's anxiety. That's why I was on the call. I was trying to get my son help for anxiety. I was like, me? No way. I'm a great dad. I'm a single dad. I do everything. Now in hindsight, I see why I gave him anxiety because I didn't feel enough. So my subconscious mind was like, oh, well, if my son, if he can play on the PGA Tour, I'm going to be enough. Not consciously. It was
Hmm.
unconscious. I was unconsciously pushing him. And I promise you, I'm not the only one doing that with my
Yeah,
kids.
absolutely, absolutely. Is there a way to avoid it though? Like you're talking about, I can see where, and we've talked on the show before about like you're not responsible for what happened to you as a child. That was not in your control. You are, however, responsible now as an adult to heal whatever is not working for you.
Yes,
And there's another. So even if you do that, children are still going to develop their own beliefs, right? Around certain things that maybe you didn't intend.
that's possible. But if you create a safe place for them, they can come to you with those beliefs. Do you know how
Mm.
many out of my 100 clients that I've asked that said, was there someone in your life that you felt safe going to with anything? I don't know that one person, maybe one out of 100, has ever said that.
Mm.
So, so yes, that's possible. Very unlikely. And I want to touch on something that you said. It's not your responsibility what happened as a child, 100%, but it is your responsibility to heal. I want to use me as an example. I'm 46 years old. I'm 47. I'm 47. My second wife walks out on me in the middle of COVID. I'm looking at my life. I'm like, well, this really sucks. Um, but look, I tried. I went to marriage counseling, so it's her fault. She gave up. My first wife, well, she has all kinds of issues. It's her fault. So what if I smoke weed every night? A lot of people smoke weed every night. So what if I drink? So what if my kids have behavioral problems? I didn't even know, Lori, that I had an issue.
Hmm.
I'm okay. I'm doing okay money wise. I got a boat. I got a nice house. My kids, they're not great, but they're not, they're not homeless, a drug addicted out, doing something crazy. So I didn't even know there was a problem.
Hmm.
So I would say that after listening to the show, you do have a responsibility. But me as an example, I didn't even know that I had an issue. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I don't know if I have an issue, go take the self-love quiz. And in 12 questions, you're going to know if you have an issue or not.
Well, yes, that's a great thing to do. I recommend going and taking it. And another way I would suspect is if somebody doesn't have everything going, like from the outside, yes, it looked like your life was amazing. And I was an observer of that. So I can say, yeah. But other people have things that aren't going the way they want. Like they're not making the money they would like to be, or their relationships are not going
Yep.
how they think they should. Like there's clearly something isn't working for them.
100%. So some of the questions in the self-love quiz is, do you have problems being in a deeply connected, safe relationship? If you're not in a relationship and haven't been for years, or you're everyone you get into, it's just like, oh my God, I picked the wrong person.
Mm.
That's an indication. If you take things personally, if you're upset a lot, if you're in an anxious state, if you drink too much, if you have any type of addiction, if you have self-destructive behaviors, those are all indications that yes, there are beliefs that are controlling you, and some people know it, and some people don't. Most people have no idea what's driving their behavior.
Right. Right. They don't even understand to the level of what drives your behavior is your beliefs and how your brain is wired. And like that part doesn't even like they don't even know that beliefs are what drive your habits, which drives your actions, which contributes to your results.
Yeah, it's a loop, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking, and in my case, the thinking was I'm not enough, creates an emotion. Anytime someone challenged me or I felt attacked, I would get sad, I would get angry. That would cause me to either fight back or go smoke weed or drink, and that reinforces often, see, I'm not enough. I wake up
Mm.
hungover, I'm like, why did I do this again? Like, so yeah, it's that vicious thought loop that we get caught in.
Yeah. Okay. So the next obvious question to me is how do you get out of it?
How do you get out of the vicious thought loop?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is great. I created this I think amazing tool called the Joy Regenerator, and it's just what it sounds. It's when you're in these bad spots, how do you get back into joy? So anytime you're in a negative, you have a negative feeling, your body is in a fight or flight state. What does that mean? It means you're thinking about the past, what happened in the past, and you're thinking about what could go wrong in the future. So we need to get you in the present moment so you can process your emotions. So do some breathing, the Navy SEAL box breathing, in for
Mm.
3 or 4 seconds, pause for 3 or 4 seconds, out for 4 or 5 seconds, pause for 4 or 5 seconds. Do that a couple times. And then I want you to identify what you're feeling. I'm going to literally teach you how to process your emotions. And very few people as children ever learn this, right? You can also
Mm-hmm.
teach this to your kids. So now I want you to identify, what are you feeling? Because most people, there are so many people that can't even feel their emotions, because the
Yeah.
second that they start to feel them, they turn to weed or work or sex or porn or drugs. So I am feeling sad. Say that out loud, because what that's doing, it's a brain hack. You're in the amygdala, the fight or flight brain, when
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling negative. By thinking, you are forced to go to your prefrontal cortex, which is actually pulling you out of the amygdala. So it's a little brain hack into the prefrontal cortex. So it's going to help your fight or flight. Then you're going to give yourself compassion for that. How many times did you as a child get compassion for your emotions? Most of us didn't. So when those negative feelings come up, it's not the 47-year-old Brad, it's the 6-year-old Brad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So give yourself compassion. Just say, it's okay, Brad, that you're feeling sad. I've got you. Then I want you to think about 3 things you can be grateful for about the current situation, and you can always do that. Then the next
I
phase,
love the gratitude thing.
yeah. And then the next step is, where did it come from? Now, this might be the most difficult thing, and that's what we really unlock dealing with helping our clients unlock. But let's say you really want to go into self-discovery on your own. Go in a deeply meditative state, deeply relax, put on, go to YouTube and find a half an hour meditation, and then do what I've just said. Go back and figure out the times in your life where you created these meanings. Because every time you have a negative emotion or you're fighting with your spouse, it has nothing to do with the actual situation. It's your brain saying danger, danger, danger. So it's going into the past and it's pulling in a belief or a meaning and putting it into that thing. So now the final stage is, what was the original thought that created my sadness? For me, every single time I ever feel a negative emotion, it goes back to the kid, I'm not enough. So I ask myself, am I enough? And the answer now is, of course I'm enough. You're enough. You always were enough. You always will be enough. So I ask myself, why am I going to be sad over a thought that isn't even true? Then I kick out it back into joy. The next step is when this happens in a relationship, you say, Lori, what you just said made me sad. It's not your fault, but would you help me process it so that I can heal and we can become better connected? Is that a little different than Lori telling me, Brad, if we were in a relationship, Brad, I'm mad because you just did this. And I'm like, well, you did this, this, and this, and last year, and this, and this. And then I get mad, and then I leave, and I'm like, I'm cold and distant to her for 3 days.
Right.
That's how my life used to work in my relationships, because that's all I knew. I was hurt. I was scared. I was protecting myself.
Is that how your parents process things?
Yeah. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of yelling, a lot of, my dad slamming the door and walking out. Yeah, my dad had no idea how to deal with his emotions. He either probably drank or worked for sure.
It's interesting because we talk a lot on the show too about emotions. From the very first interview I ever did for this show with Pam, she brought it up, or I don't even remember how we got into it, but her point was, in her family, they did not have emotions. She didn't even know what emotions were until she got into therapy in her late 40s.
Yeah. So Dr. Gabor Mate talks about kids have two primary needs. Attachment. If you're not attached to your parents, how many days do you survive? Not many. Then the other thing is authenticity. And what does authenticity really mean? It means the ability to be yourself, share your emotions, and follow your gut. A couple thousand years ago, you see a lion, you're like, oh, I'm not going to worry about that. What happens? You're dead. So with your friend who couldn't feel emotions, there was a very, very early time in her life where she showed emotions and something bad happened. So her little brain said, okay, I'm in survival now. If I detach from my parents because my emotion just caused them to get angry at me or shut down. So I'm doing something bad by being myself. So I've got to pick one or the other. You're always going to pick attachment because, again, without food and water, you're dead. So what do? You change who you are. You lose connection from yourself. You become disconnected. That's why we have 33% of Americans on an anti-anxiety or antidepressant. That's why we have 70% of Americans on a prescription drug and like 62% on two. People are like, well, what does that have to do? If you have stress and you have bottled up emotions, do you not think they're going to cause you sickness? Yes, they're going to cause. It's the major source of sickness in this world. And if I'd have heard this 5 years ago, I'd been like, that dude's crazy. No, I've got books by doctors on my shelf that verify it's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the truth. I've been saying that for years too. And people are like, no, it's genetic. It's this, it's that. No.
There's like 1/100% of diseases. There's such a small percentage of diseases that are genetic. It is insane. Western medicine, though, they love the autoimmune. And autoimmune, by the way, is mostly stress. And then they love the idiopathic. And what does idiopathic mean? There's no known cause. Yes, there's a cause. If you have self-contempt, it's the opposite of self-love. This is from my buddy Mark Mincola. Self-contempt creates dis-ease. Your body is out of ease. And what's the next step? Disease. Dis-ease causes disease.
Right.
It just does. So the universe is perfect. You either solve your issues and your beliefs that are messing you up, or guess what? The universe solves them for you through sickness or death. It's that easy.
So then the question becomes like, where do you go for, let's say you have some kind of dis-ease and your regular doctors are just like, yeah, we're just going to cut that out or give you a drug for it. How do you go about, or in your experience, how do you go about finding somebody who can help you heal yourself in a different way?
I'm going to answer that, but I mentioned the joy regenerate. I want to give that to your audience for completely free. If you go to bradchandler.com/joy, you can download it and I'll give an explanatory video and everything. It's pretty cool. So if you've got a sickness and you're being told it's autoimmune and they want to put you on drugs, because Western medicine loves
Mm.
to diagnose, label, and
Yeah,
put on drugs.
well, because pharmaceuticals are like,
Yeah.
they want to give everybody money, or they want
Yep.
to collect everybody's money. And yeah,
And they're doing
anyway,
they're doing a damn good job because
they
70%
are.
of Americans are on a prescription drug.
Absolutely.
So if you're being told that you've got autoimmune disease, or, and by the way, what doctor have you ever been to that said, hey, what was your childhood like? What's your stress level like? I've never
Mm-hmm.
been to one. So you have got to go find someone who knows that disease isn't about how you heal disease isn't about diagnosing you, labeling you, and putting you on drugs. If drugs worked, we wouldn't have 33% of Americans on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety, yet hospitalizations for anxiety or depression are going through the roof. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
work. Most of them don't work. There is a place for them if you're in a really, really, really bad spot so that you can actually start therapy. So go find someone. A couple of resources. Heal on Amazon is an amazing documentary on healing through
Yeah.
fixing your limiting beliefs. My friend Mark Mincola has a documentary and a book called The Way of Miracles. He's helped over 60,000 people in the last 40 years. Go find someone like him, someone
Mm-hmm.
who understands that. Look, if you look at Ayurveda, and this Ayurveda mind, body, spirit's been around for 5,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have drugs back then, but they healed through the mind, body, spirit connection. You can heal that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever read the book, Dying to Be Me? Was it called Dying to Be Me?
No.
Her name is escaping my head. It starts with an A. I'll look it up, but it's about a woman who was dead pretty much from cancer, like in the hospital on an operating table, dead. And she had this vision that she could heal herself. And she came back to life. And within, I think it was like 6 or 8 weeks, the cancer had left her body.
Yeah, there's a lot. There are stories like that Mark in Way of Miracles talks about, and then the Heal documentary. It happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty cool. I got to look up her name. Anita Morjani, Dying to Be Me. Yeah, really fascinating book. My journey from cancer to healing, I think it is.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Anyway, really cool. And she was actually discovered by Wayne Dyer. Like her story, he heard her story, and then he brought her into the world to share this story.
He is one of my all-time. He's probably my idol now. Now that I think about it, if I could be Wayne, I'd be Wayne Dyer before I was Tony Robbins in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
And not that I have
absolutely.
anything against Tony Robbins. He's a wonderful man, but Wayne Dyer, oh my God, I love that man.
Yeah, he was such a good human.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him a couple of times, and he
Oh
was,
wow, you
yeah,
did?
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, really cool guy. And then there's another book called The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton.
I've followed Bruce Lipton. He's also an amazing individual.
Yeah, I have never met him, but I met somebody who was friends with him, and yeah, really. But again, these books are proof that the mind is so strong that we can heal our bodies with our minds and by changing those thoughts and beliefs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I will also throw out there that about finding somebody who can help you, like chiropractors. Not all of them do the same thing, but I had Dr. David Gustitis on the show a couple months ago. He's actually my chiropractor, and he's a functional medicine, like he's into functional medicine. So he's going to ask those kind of questions that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. What else? You have a podcast yourself. which, and so I love my podcast and I love listening to other people's podcasts, but I don't always have as much time as I'd like to listen to other podcasts. And but yours is one of the ones that is in my list, in my lineup, because I'm just so fascinated every episode.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. It's a lot about this. It's how can you live the life that you want. We're rebranding our company soon to Limitless You, because everyone's limitless once they remove these limiting beliefs, again, that a lot of us don't even know that we're carrying. So
Mhm.
yeah, check it out. It's on all the major podcast platforms. How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs.
Cool. So your belief is that 99% of the people walking the earth need to clear their cache, if you were talking in computer terms,
Yeah, I love it.
to reboot themselves with new beliefs that are more accurate.
Yeah, and the data shows, look, 83% of Americans identify as not being very happy. We've gone over the percentage of people who are
What
on
percent?
83% of
Wow.
Americans identify as being not very happy. So I don't
Okay.
know how many identified as happy, but that's a big number, right? Then you've
Yeah.
got the percentage of people on anti anxiety and depression drugs. Then you've got the prescription drugs. You look at our hospitals, the divorce rate, the obesity rate. All of this is tied into to these beliefs. So
Hmm.
it's basically proof that yes, the world has a lot of growth to endure. But I think it's happening. I think people are finally starting to wake up and see that there's a better way. Um, if you're struggling or suffering, like that's not, you weren't put on this earth to struggle. Like the
Hmm.
fact that you're even here is a complete miracle. That one egg matched
Yep.
up with that one sperm, a complete miracle. So despite what someone might have told you as a child that you're not worth it or I wish you weren't born, it was all just them. It had nothing to do with you. You're a miracle. You're enough. You always were enough. You always will be enough. And you were put here for a massive mission. And might be like, well, Brad, I have no idea why I'm here. Neither did I for 47 years. Because when you have these limiting beliefs, you're literally in a fight or flight for most of your life and you're running from a tiger, running from the proverbial tiger. How can you figure out what your purpose is in life if you've got a tiger chasing you? So,
Hmm.
literally, within weeks of me killing that tiger, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my purpose. This is why I was put here, to help people end their suffering and struggling and find freedom and happiness. Because it's always inside of you. It has always been there. Everything you need to be happy, you have right now. For 47 years, Lori, I chased boats and money and women and status and power, thinking when I get this, and this, I'm going to be happy. And if you think that's the way to go, look at the Michael Jacksons of the world and the Matthew
Hmm.
Perrys, right? They're
Hmm.
Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse. They had all the money and accolades they could ever have, but they had those limiting beliefs that eventually ended up taking their lives. So stop searching, because if you're looking outside yourself, you're gonna look until you die. It's not outside, it's inside, and that's the magic.
There are some theories that addiction is kind of a lack of connection issue, like a lack of connection with other people, lack of community.
Look, I think I mentioned this earlier. Every problem in your life is a thinking problem. That thinking problem was created in childhood. And what happens is when you create that meaning, oftentimes you're disconnecting from yourself because you don't want to endure the pain. So at the heart of these 99% of people that you mentioned that need to do the cash reboot,
Hmm.
the whole reason is because they're disconnected. You can't be connected to other people if you're disconnected from yourself. So it's
Mm.
all about what I do in this 5 week program that I have. It's all about reconnecting with yourself. I can't tell you how many people that have scored negative or lack of self love that in 5 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, go to extreme self love. Because all we do is we turn around the story in their brain and they start telling themselves the truth.
Mm. What do you say to people who are like, you can't possibly be that happy? Because I know that people started seeing you putting out stuff after you went through your transformation. They're like, what's up with Brad? Because he's totally different now. And it seems a little weird. Like, how can somebody be like that? Like, go from where you were to where you are. And because you started really putting yourself out on social media talking about this because it is your purpose.
Yeah, you do exactly what I've just shared in the last half an hour. You go and you
Yeah.
turn around those meetings. And I've had people, many, many close friends even say it was actually irritating when you started doing that because I
Mhm.
was like, who is this guy? And this is never going to last. And this is just another flash in his pan, right? And the one guy was on his podcast last week. He goes, the one thing I underestimated about you, Brad, though, was your purpose and passion around this.
Mm.
So yeah, people see me and they're like, you just seem to be happy all the time. And I am not 100%, but when I'm unhappy, I use the joy regenerator. Now I can process it in my head in like milliseconds. And usually I can kick right out of it. And you can do the same thing. You don't need to be struggling and suffering. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be in a relationship with a deeply connected relationship. And how do you do that? You just do exactly what I'm saying. You go back and you reverse those untruths that are driving this behavior that you want to change.
Yeah. All right. I have a couple more questions, but the one that's jumping out at me right now is this is not about not feeling emotions, right? Because we're still human. So you're still going to have emotions like sadness and anger. They're still going to come up. And you're saying use the joy regenerator
Yeah, I mean,
or like, is it okay to sit in them for a minute? Like, if somebody that you care
yeah,
about passes away, you're going to be sad.
yeah. So when you say to yourself, "I'm feeling sad," and you say it's okay, you're feeling sad, Lori. I've got you. We can sit here as long as you need because what we often do is we don't feel the emotion or we feel it and we push it down or we turn to drugs or alcohol or again sex or porn or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't solve anything. It just comes back the next time. But if you sit with it and you process it, it eventually goes away. So, no,
Right.
emotions are really great. Emotions actually bring you closer to yourself, bring you closer to other people, but you just can't let your emotions drive you to negativity because when you negative self-talk was another question on the self-love quiz. Do you know that your brain doesn't know, and your mind and your body doesn't know the difference between when you're talking negatively to yourself and someone else is talking negatively to yourself? You are creating a fight or flight situation, and you are making your body release cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which
Yeah.
creates inflammation. And 60 or 70% of all disease is based in inflammation. So stop talking negatively to yourself. There's nothing to talk negatively to yourself. Be your own best friend. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, don't say it to yourself.
How do you catch yourself? Because I think a lot of people, well, I don't know. I think some people might say, but I don't talk negatively to myself. Like they don't even hear it.
Well, that's probably true. Some people don't, and some people. I had a gentleman, a client last year that said, "All I want you to do, Brad, through this 5 weeks is help me go from on a scale of 0 to 10. My negativity is 11 to an 8. That's all. I don't need to go to a 5 or 0." And in that year now, he has been a 0. His life has been so changed that he's actually going in the direction of now helping people. He wants to teach people. Actually, he wants to teach other healers and therapists how to do it because he's become so enthralled with it that all he does is like read these books on hypnosis and healing the mind. It's amazing. So
That's cool. Okay. All right. Yeah. And then you brought up what you said about him is you don't have to go from 11 to 0 in one giant step. It's baby steps, maybe, to get into it. You
uh,
could
you
potentially, you're saying
could
you could.
You could. A lot of my clients have massive shifts in like 3 to 5 hours of working with me. And ironically, through my transformation, it was a 3 hour session in this Airbnb bedroom in Park City where I came out of there just completely different. I'm like, and I had been going to therapy for
Mm,
3 decades. And I went
mm.
to like 50 different marriage counseling sessions. And in 3 hours, I got more than all of those put together.
Wow. Wow. All right. I'm going to ask you the one song that I love asking my guests. I mean, I love asking lots of questions. Obviously, that's why I'm doing the show. But what's your hype song when you need an extra boost of energy? Obviously, you have a lot of energy. When you need to be especially ramped up, I don't know, maybe you're getting ready to do like a workout session or something.
I mean, there are so many amazing songs. I mean, one came to mind is "Roar" by Katy Perry. One, I love the beat. Two, I love her. Her personality is so freakish. She was so funny on America's Got Talent, and it's just about not being held down.
Yeah.
So many of us are held down. So much of the suffering in this world is self inflicted, and there's a better way. You don't have to. You can rise up and you can be that amazing person. You deserve everything you ever wanted in life. And you can get there as soon as you get rid of these beliefs that are hidden in your subconscious mind, driving all this behavior.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. I'm going to put a link to that song in the show notes. And lastly, you mentioned it earlier, bradchandler.com. That's the best place for people to go to reach out and do your quiz and continue a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take the quiz, schedule a call. I'm here to help, right? My whole, since I've shifted 3 years ago, my shift has gone from trying to make a bunch of money to prove my worth to making an impact. So if I can help you, if you're struggling, if you know someone that's struggling, literally, if you go to bradchandler.com/contact, my cell phone's even on there. Like we lost someone through suicide about a month ago that was a real estate investor in one of our masterminds. And I didn't know him very well, but it's just tragic, and no one should take their life, and no one needs to. So if you know anyone struggling and they just need someone to talk to, give my cell phone number. I'll talk to them.
Cool. Thank you. I will put a link to your website in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is the Four-Letter Word.
Thank you.